Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Puttang dhammang sanghang namassami ito parang sakajang dhammo sotapoti. Okay, so it's very nice to see all of you this morning, and over the past few days I've got to meet some of you, and thanks for braving the drizzle to come here this morning and get up early on a Sunday morning. It's very good to see you all coming out here to make offerings of generosity to the Sangha, to come and do some chanting and some meditation, and to really be encouraging to those around you to come and practice the Dhamma. And so that's actually what I thought I might talk about today. What is this thing that we call the Dhamma? Now, we might all have opinions or views or have some idea of what the Dhamma is. If somebody asks us, we say, of course we know what the Dhamma is. It's the teachings of the Buddha. And we might just think that, well, what is the Dhamma? This is easy. This is just Buddhism 101. This is easy for me to know. But what I'd like to try to share with you this morning is actually, if you continually recollect what the Dhamma is and you investigate it quite regularly and keep bringing it in and keep going over it, this can be a very profound way for you to investigate your own experience. But not only that, but to give you a sort of a drive and a purpose of what you're actually looking for in your practice. And so what I'd like to try to explain in some way is that while the Dhamma is many things, it can be seen as the teachings of the Buddha or some sort of religion or philosophy or some kind of system. It's at another level of that. It points to the inner nature of our own experience. And for me, this is what's the most important part of the Dhamma. And so, because it points to this inner state, it's about our own practice and about our own looking at our own experience to see this. And so if we continually look outwards for the Dhamma, then we're not really going to find it. It's something that is within our own experience. But I guess at a deeper level, what is that? What is this thing that is our own experience? And what I'd like to try to suggest to you today is that it's something that you have to look inside for. But before I go down too many rabbit holes of exactly what it is, it'd probably be good to define it in some way. What actually is the Dhamma in terms of a conceptual analysis of what it is. If we Dhamma as a concept, it's actually quite old. It's a lot older than just how we understand it in Buddhism. It's permeated Indian thought for thousands and thousands of years, and it originated in Vedic Hinduism. And Dhamma as a concept, it can mean so many different things in so many different contexts. It can mean something different in Hinduism or Buddhism or Jainism or Sikhism. And it encompasses so many different things. It encompasses things like the way we behave, the natural order of the universe, the duties, the rights, the rituals that we have. It explains about phenomena. And it's been so central to Indian philosophy and thought and culture and society that they put a Dhamma wheel in the middle of the Indian flag. So that's how important it is to this Indian thought. And so there's no real great one-to-one translation of exactly what the Dhamma is. It's very, very broad. But if we drill down on it a little bit more. Okay, well, what does Dhamma mean in terms of Buddhism? The first thing we can say that the Dhamma is that it is the teachings and the sayings of the Buddha. And not just the Buddha, the enlightened beings, and it can be considered anything that's in the 84,000 teachings of the Pali Canon. So that's one way that we can describe what Dhamma is. Another way we can describe what Dhamma is what we just went through. Then we took refuge in the Triple Gem, and one of those aspects of that is the Dhamma. So we're taking refuge in the teachings and the way of practice of the Buddha. So that's another way to understand it. Going a little bit deeper about what the Dhamma actually is that it is. The Buddha described Dhamma as a natural law or the truth of existence, and also he described it as he could describe it in terms of it's some sort of phenomena. It's either mental phenomena or physical phenomena out in the world. And the Buddha was quite careful when he talked about Dhamma as a phenomena. He talked about it in terms of that the phenomena was dependently arisen, and so that helped differentiate it from the Vedic meaning, and he was able to build more of his thought around Dhamma in that respect and to separate it out. So if we look at any one of these things, we see it as the teachings of the Buddha, we see it as something that we go for refuge in, we see it as phenomena, we see it as a state of truth. If we were to be asked about what the Dhamma is and we gave any one of those answers, this is totally fine, and it's correct. But what I'd like to encourage you is you just don't stop there when you think about what the Dhamma is. Really try to understand it a bit more. So what is this thing that's the Dhamma? What is this thing that's the truth? What is this thing that is the nature of our own experience? How do we drill deeper into that? How do we understand that? The Buddha said that the Dhamma was the truth of our existence. So how do we get to that? And this thing that is the nature of truth of our own existence is something we're striving towards when we practice. But again, it can be very abstract and formless. And if you think about Dhamma as another way to explain what Dhamma is, it's the state of enlightenment, to realize the Dhamma and to see the Dhamma. It's this state of enlightenment, this state of freedom, this state of being unbounded by anything in the world and not attaching to anything. But still, it doesn't really get at what it is. So what is a way to explain something that is inexplainable? What is a way to explain something that is formless? And so I think one way that I've actually practiced a lot over the years in doing this is recollecting the chant that we did just then. That is the chant of the recollections of the qualities of the Dhamma. And that, if you remember, it's Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayiko Pachatang Veditapo Vinyuhi. If you look at that and you look at the translation of that and what the words actually mean, it's not pointing to something of like, okay, that's the Four Noble Truths, or that's the Eightfold Path, or that's developing meditation, developing kindness, adhering to a particular kind of set of rules. It doesn't actually mean that. What that chant is pointing towards is that it's explaining something about the inner nature of our own existence. It's about an internal state of mind or an internal quality of mind. When we explain what the Dhamma is, it's not something outside, it's an internal quality of the mind. So if you take that chant and you take the translations of it and really pull it apart and really look at it line by line and word by word, it can be something very deep and very profound for you to actually to contemplate and to give you guidance and to give you purpose and direction in your practice. So if you look at the first line is Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo, and what this line means is the Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One, or the Dhamma is well expounded by the Buddha. If you think about what that means, the Dhamma is well expounded by the Buddha. What's that actually pointing to? The Buddha was able, ostensibly by himself, to become enlightened and to realize this formless, free, liberated state of mind. He was able to do this ostensibly without another teacher. He was able to realize this, but not only was he able to realize this, but he was able to explain this very difficult concept to many, many people. He was able to put that inner experience into words, and even above and beyond that of just putting this inner experience into words, he was able to outline a whole set of practices and methods and trainings and meditation objects for people to practice along the same lines and to reach that same goal. And if you just keep going broader and broader out, he built up a full ethical and moral system around that to actually live one's life in accordance with the Dhamma and to bring one closer to the Dhamma. Go further than that, he built up a community of people, the laymen, laywomen, the monks and the nuns, and their social orders and practices of how to integrate with each other. And then if you keep going out, that teaching has lasted over 2,500 plus years. So if you think the Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One, you think it's this inner state of experience that this one person understood, but then he was able to pull it all the way out across people and the community and time to where we are now. So the Dhamma being expounded well by the Blessed One, that's something that's just really astonishing to actually think about. The next word in the chant is sandetiko, and this means apparent here and now. And if you think about this and you contemplate on this and you recollect this and you meditate on this, this is just one word about the Dhamma that can actually change your life so much, can really have a profound impact on you. What is something that is here and now? It's right here with us in the present. It's not something that's some kind of far-off goal that we need to work towards. It's not something that if we just keep practicing, we'll eventually get to this state. It's something that's already here. It's already in this one place that you actually inhibit. It's in your own experience. So we obviously, all of you come here to practice, and I guess like most of us, and I'm exactly the same. I had this kind of idea when I first started practicing that, I've got all the problems in my mind. I've got all these defilements, and these defilements just keep building up and up, and I'm becoming more and more deluded, and I'm spinning around and I'm suffering more and more, and the reason I'm suffering more and more is that I'm attaching to this sense of self that I have, and what I really want to do is experience liberation and enlightenment. And so we always see it as this far-off thing. But actually, if you look at that word, sanditiko, it's apparent here and now, it's already here. This aspect of the defilements and the problems that I have in my own mind, they're in the same place that freedom and liberation is. We want to see through the illusory nature of the self. Well, that's right in this same place where the self is. So this, continually looking at this and seeing that it's this same place that you think you are now, that you're deluded, you're still not enlightened, or you're still overrun by the sense of self. The Dhamma actually is in this same place that is. The only problem is just you just haven't learned how to notice it yet, or let go this sense of self a little bit more. The next word in the chant is akaliko, and akaliko means timeless. And if you think about that word, what does something that is timeless, what does that mean? Something that is timeless, it's ever present. It's always there. It doesn't go away. If something is timeless, then it's not born. It doesn't die. It's not created. It can't be destroyed. It's ever present, and it's always with us. It's always there. It can't go away. And so, there might be some interpretations of in Buddhism that, okay, the Dhamma of the Buddha Gautama, it's only going to last 5,000 years, and then it'll pass away, and people won't be able to realize it anymore to the next coming Buddha. I understand the logic of that. Maybe people will become not as interested in it, so they won't strive for it. I get that, but I'm also very agnostic about the fact of, how can something that is the true nature of our existence, how can that go away? It can't ever go away if it is actually timeless. And so this as well points to the fact that it's not something that we eventually will get to. It's already here now, and it's already available for you if it is timeless. The next word is ehipassiko, and many of you know what ehipassiko means. It's a bit of a common catchphrase for Buddhism. Ehipassiko means encouraging investigation. And when you look at, okay, what does it actually mean to investigate something? And the whole of the Buddhist traditions and the whole of the Buddhist teachings, it is encouraging you to look at your own mind, look at your own experience, look at this thing that you're calling yourself. It's inviting you to be curious about what it is to be human. It's encouraging you to look inward at your own experience and find this thing out for yourself. It's, in a way, you can look at this in terms of, if you want to make the comparison, you can even compare it to like a scientific inquiry into something. If you have some sort of question about something you want to find about in science, you have a hypothesis, you have some sort of idea of what you want to look at, you find a way to measure that, you observe the phenomena and you measure the phenomena that you want to look at, you take the information from that and the results, and then you interpret that. And the Dhamma is something like that as well. The process of looking for that is something like that as well, whereby you have an idea about how your experience is. You think, okay, this is basically what it's like to be a human being. Let's find a way to look at that. And finding a way to look at that is by using meditation. And you observe, through meditation, you observe your own experience. You see what happens when you observe, and you see what the result is from that. And a lot of times with any kind of investigation, it mightn't be exactly the way that you think it's going to be. You might read books, or you might have somebody else, you might talk to someone else, and it's like, if you see the Dhamma, it's like this or that. But for you yourself, it might be very different when you look inside yourself. So this is something we have to look for ourselves. It's not something that somebody else can give to us. The next line is opanayiko, which means leading inwards. And for me, this is actually the crux of what it is. This is the most important part of what it is, of leading inwards. Leading inwards, this shows that this is something that we have to find ourselves. We can't find it out in the world. We can't find it by reading about it. We can't find it by talking to other people about it. It's actually something that we have to look inside our own experience to to realize. And when you do this, when you do look inside, it's, you start to realize how much of a mess it is in there sometimes, and how messy the mind is, how distracted the mind is, and one can become a little bit frustrated. And also, if you go even deeper than that, you keep looking back into your own experience, that there might be things in there that you don't like and you don't want to see. The sort of those dark corners of your own mind that have all the regrets and the fears and the worries and the concerns, and it has all these different kinds of things. And so that can be very confronting when you actually start to look inside. And even when you get to a deeper level of that, the thing that can be the most world-shattering is when you look into your own experience and look at this thing that you call a self, and that you realize that this thing is merely illusory. And so everything that is your identity just drops away. That actually can be quite terrifying. But the more you practice this and the more you look inside, the more you get to understand the actual nature of this, and it's not something to be terrified of. But you have to keep doing this. You have to be courageous enough to actually continue to do this, continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper. It's meditation and trying to find the Dhamma. It's not just all like a happy circus of peace and calm and happiness and joy, and it has those aspects obviously, but it also has the aspects where it can be a little bit of a struggle there. But if you do go through that, then you reach the last line of that chant. It's Pachatang Veditapo Vinyuhi, which means to be experienced individually by the wise. And so if you've looked inside and you've gone through and you've understood the nature of the mind, and you've gone through this, you've understood suffering, then you can truly be called wise. To be wise, it's not just, you don't just, read a book and then all of a sudden that you're wise. You have to go through something to actually become wise, and you have to experience something for yourself. You can't just listen to somebody else's teachings and all of a sudden now you're wise. You have to live through this yourself and become wise. So if you do look inside, then you can actually be considered one of these wise individuals that has seen the Dhamma. And so, experienced individually by the wise, this also can mean that, again, this isn't something that can be transmitted to you or transmuted to you. So the Buddha can't make you enlightened. The enlightened beings, they can't make you enlightened. This is something that you have to do for yourself and have to practice with yourself. So, while I've gone through all that, it's like, well, great. How do you actually do that? It's all well and good to go through this sort of permutations but how do you actually get to that? Well, luckily, because the Dhamma is well expounded by the Buddha, there is ways to do this. There is a path, there is a methodology to actually do that. And the way we do this is by, when we first start to practice, we build up a very strong ethical and moral foundation, whereby when we try to sit meditation, we don't have any regrets, or we're not worried about any people that we've cheated or lied to and all these kinds of things. When you have that strong ethical framework, and you've developed some stability of mind through meditation and what we call focused awareness or samadhi. When you have a bit of at least a decent foundation of that, it doesn't have to be overarchingly great. You just have some stability of mind there. That's when you do what is a part of the chant, is you look inward. And what do you actually look at? You look at the nature of your own experience. You look into the mind. Usually we're so caught up in looking out through the mind into the world. But what you have to learn to do is look back into the mind. And the deeper you look into the mind, you try to look for this thing that you call a self. You look for this thing that is me, this thing that is at the center of my conscious experience. You try to find what that thing is. And the more you actually look for it, the less you find there. And so that not finding that thing that you call a self is actually finding the Dhamma. The more you can do that and realize that there's no sort of me, I, that's sitting in the middle of experience that owns this body and experiences all these sights and sounds, that it is merely just phenomena that arises. It's sights that arise, it's sounds that arise, it's thoughts that arise and pass away, and that there's no one there that actually experiences this. The more you start to realize, it's like, well, why would I cling to any of this? Why would I attach to any of this? The more you can actually start to let go of all these sights and sounds and thoughts and all these kinds of things. And the more you can do that, the more you'll be understanding and seeing the Dhamma that is in the here and now. And so initially it might just be like a short time. You might just sort of like get a glimpse, really short glimpse. Oh, there's nothing there. And it's amazing, but it goes back and you just go back to being normal old you. But that's what the practice is continually coming back and trying to do that over and over again, trying to build up that foundation of mind and then look into the mind and look for the self. And these periods, they get longer and longer. You can dwell in this state of not attaching to this perception that you perceive as a self. You can do that for longer and longer periods. But again, it takes practice and we have to keep looking back at it. But the encouraging thing about the Dhamma, it's there. It's there already. You just have to look for it. You just have to learn to notice it. So I've probably rambled on for a while now, and so just to conclude then that the Dhamma, it's not really something. While it's very prominent in our lives as if you're a practicing Buddhist or you're practicing meditation, I'd like to suggest, don't overlook it, recollect it, investigate it, contemplate on it, meditate on it, think about it a lot, exactly what it is. And when you do that, you'll start to realize that it's not something that's far away from you. It's not something that is in some other time, another place. It's actually right here in this place that you can experience. And the more you look inside, the more you try to look for this thing that you're calling a self, the more you're going to actually see the Dhamma. And the more you can do that, then you will truly be a wise person. And so, yeah, that's probably all I've got to say on that. So hopefully, hopefully what I've said this morning, hopefully might be of benefit to you in some way, hopefully in your life and in your practice. If it is, that's really good. That's encouraging for me. And if there's something that you didn't understand, you don't agree with, that's fine. You can ask me questions. Even if you don't agree with something, we can hash it out and see what we can come up with. So maybe if anybody has any questions now.
If you do have a question, could you come up and speak into the microphone?
Yeah.
Thank you for your talk, Bhante.
No problem at all.
Is there any meditation practices or contemplations that you'd suggest for no self to learn about?
Yeah.
To get closer to that?
Yeah. It's one way you can do that is by when you're sitting there, say for example you're watching the breath, you always have this feeling that, okay, it's me here, I'm sitting here, I'm watching the breath, I'm paying attention to the breath more. When the mind is a little bit more calm, you can actually look back, okay, so what is this thing that's paying attention? Or if you notice a thought come up, just look back, who's the one that's actually thinking? Trying to look back into that, because obviously thoughts and things like that arise in our mind and we think, that's me thinking, I'm the owner of these thoughts. But if you look back at that, look back into that, it's like, who's the one thinking? It's like, well, thoughts just sort of just come out of nowhere, they come out of the darkness, they drop back into the darkness kind of thing. There's nobody there that's a thinker. And so if you can turn your attention back on this thing that you think is paying attention, then this is a good way to do that. You can also do these with other sensory modalities, like you hear a sound. You always think, okay, there's a sound of a car, I'm the one that's sitting here hearing that. And again, if you try to think, well, who is the one that's actually hearing? You realize, there's nobody really there that's hearing. It's just a sound that's coming and going. So you can continually try to do that and look back in any of the sensory modalities, like taste or feeling, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and all these kinds of things as well. Always try to look back behind that thing. Well, who's the one that's actually experiencing that? And you pull closer and closer into this thing that we feel like is the center of our existence. We have this feeling that there's maybe like a me, like sort of, for me it's like I'm sort of like riding around up in my head and I'm driving this body or whatever and operating throughout the world, but looking back in at that thing that I think is me, I found that's one of the better ways to do it. And there's, and sometimes there's those specific practices, but sometimes it just sort of just your mind might get calm and all of a sudden just everything like drops out. And so that can happen as well. And if something like that happens, don't be worried about it. Don't be scared about it. Some people can get a little bit concerned, but as long as you look at it in the terms of that, again, this is just another experience that arises and passes away. This isn't a lasting state of mind. It's not like it's not like yourself's dropped away and you'll never ever find yourself and you won't remember who you are and you don't even know if these keys are your own keys. Like, it's not going to be like that. It's okay. So just try to accept the experience for what it is and then just let it go. It's like, oh, that's good. That's an encouraging state. But I guess one other thing that I'd say about it as well, if you have some kind of experience like this, don't take this as like, sweet, I'm enlightened. Like, I've got this worked out. Don't do that. It's like, okay, you've had a good experience, but it's only the first step. You have to keep going back and continuing to do that. And a lot of us, might have some good meditation, a good week of meditation. It's like, man, nothing can perturb me. Like it's, but really it's just a transient experience. So you just have to continue to go back to it. It's like, oh, well, this thing is not sure. This experience that I had is not sure. It's only the first step. I have to keep going back and doing it. It's an encouraging step. It's a step in the right direction, but it still is only the first step. Yeah. So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, good.
Yeah, thank you.
Bhante, thank you for explaining the salutation of Dhamma very clearly.
No problem.
We always recite and a lot of people, we don't really understand what it really means. It's really profound,
Okay,
the salutation of
Dhamma.
Yeah, good. You say that you go inwards and find that there's no self. That is the liberation. I see that in the whole practice of Buddha's teaching, what you find is how this view of self is created by our ignorance. When you find out how it is created by understanding the 5 aggregates of arising, dependent origination, and the true nature of how it works, I think that is when you understand how it is formed by ignorance, I think that is the time you realize this is an illusion.
Yeah.
The view of self is illusion. Is that right, Dhamma?
Yeah. Like it's that that's another way. That's another way to look at it. You look at parts of the Buddha's teaching. Say, for example, the second main discourse of the Buddha, the Anatalakkhana Sutta, where the Buddha asks the 5 aesthetics of his 5 first disciples. Just for anybody that doesn't know, he went through each of those, what we call the 5 aggregates, which is something that the way that the Buddha formulated it, this is the phenomena that makes up existence, that makes up your human existence. And he asked, is there a self that's in the body? Is there a self that's in feelings? Is there a self that's in perception and memory? Is there a self that's in thoughts? Is there a self that's in conscious experience? And obviously they went through each one and said, no, 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 no. And so that's what the Buddha was aiming at, that there isn't something that we call a self in that. Obviously we usually think the memories that come up in my mind, that's me, and the thoughts that come up in the mind, that's me, and this is my body and I own it. But obviously you start to see that these aren't things that you can control. They arise by them. You can't control the body. You can't control if the body gets sick and gets ill. You can't really control your thoughts. They just come up and they just keep annoying you. And so this is phenomena that's out of our hands in a way, and that's why that there's no self in that as well. There's nobody there that's controlling it. And so, yeah, if you can look at it in that way as well. Okay, well, how does this self form? I attach to all these things. This body, it's like, yeah, this is my body. These thoughts, yeah, this is me. This is me thinking. These memories, this is me thinking about these things. This emotion, this feeling I have, this thing is me, and I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm happy. You can see that we attach to that because that's what we've got. That's all you've really got in life. You've got your experience. So you take your experience as me, and obviously there's some sort of a like evolutionary advantage of that, of it keeps the organism going or whatever. But so yeah, if you can look as well at how that thing builds up, and then look at its constituent parts as well, and then okay, well, I'm not my feelings or something like that, then that's also a good way to do it as well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good.
Good morning, Bhante.
Hey, morning.
Thanks, Ajahn, for your teachings today. Couple of things came to my mind, so thought of asking you.
Yeah.
Maybe these are stupid questions, so you can forgive me for that, because
No, it's fine.
I'm a stupid person, so can't think about much
No,
things.
it's fine.
So, yeah.
I've asked many stupid questions in my life, so, and I've given many stupid answers as well. So,
Okay, so you said just now you said something like a few minutes back, like try to know who is basically in a way the observer of the phenomena, right? Something like who sees and who hears.
Yep.
If I tell you regarding when this type of question, basically when I try to think about this thing, not many times but sometimes, but usually somehow maybe my stupid brain just gives me an answer, something like if I ask who is seeing something in my mind says that, okay, my brain is seeing.
Yeah.
Then I say that, okay, brain is just a body part, and then basically we, as per some videos which we have seen, like some documentaries are there in the YouTube or something, like the latest scientific discoveries, and something related to quantum physics as well. So in a way, yeah, so we know that, okay, there is something like, for example, the thing like color. Color doesn't exist in reality. It's something like something created by the mind itself. So I can say that, okay, my brain doesn't think it, something like my mind thinks it. So, but after that, usually the discussion in the mind usually stops. Something like who sees and answer usually comes like something around my mind sees, and basically then maybe I can ask something like what is my mind, and then basically it's something like nothing comes up. It's something like just what is my mind, and yeah, maybe one or two moments or something, and then nothing is there, and then usually that question subsides in a way. So how can a person basically develop a question which basically goes along with it along?
How do you
basically
extenuate that understanding?
Yeah, or at least have that question going through with you. Basically, that question just drops off. Basically, okay, 5 minutes I thought about it today, and then basically that question doesn't even matter to me for the remaining of the day. Few months passed by, few years passed by, I didn't thought about that question. So how can somebody create a question for themselves which can continue with them till the time they actually find the answer for it? Because, so much matter is available on the internet, so in a way, Yeah,
Yeah.
all the information is there in a way. Whatever you want, everything is there. So in a way, all the answers are available in a way. So
Yeah,
how to have-
I think I understand your question. It's like there's definitely a danger of that, of like you go, okay, try to look inside. Oh, who's this one that's here? It's, oh, there's no one here, and it's like, yeah, so what? Like,
no, Ajahn, I'm not going to that stage that
Yeah.
you are saying that there is no one there. Basically, that danger even is not appearing. It's something like the answer is coming in the mind, something like, okay, I have read in the theoretical things that, okay, my mind thinks. And then what is my mind? My mind is something like, it's, some teachings say it's everywhere. It's basically everything is in the mind, something like that. So
I understand. And there is, how would you say, it's not always just a question. Like a way you can do it is sort of by asking yourself a question, but more what I'm trying to get at as well, it's a way of observing, using your attention to look into this thing that you think is you. So while you can use like some kind of questioning modality of like, what is this thing that I call a self? Who am I? Blah, blah, blah. You can do that, and it can be very perfunctory in some ways. What makes it really deep and really can make it really profound is actually using your attention to look back into this thing and actually observing it for what it is, and not just questioning it. If you find questioning helps, then then that's a good thing, and you find a particular kind of line of questioning that helps. That's good. But it's more about actually putting your attention back on that phenomena, the phenomena that's arising and passing away. And so what can also happen as well is like, okay, yeah, I realize that it's just the brain doing this thing, and you can have a little bit of that kind of so what kind of experience. But it's one of these things, the more you do it, the more you do, it's like, yeah, the first time you do it, so what, who cares? You try it again, who cares? You investigate a little bit more, it's like, oh, hang on, I'm getting it. And when you finally get it, it's like, oh. So you just have to just keep going back to it, keep observing this thing that you think is there in the middle of your experience. So it's not necessarily just a line of inquiry and a line of questioning. It's also a methodology of actually observing and paying attention to your own experience, how it is in this present moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so basically, how do we make sure that we are paying attention properly?
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the whole practice. As long as you're paying attention to what's arising in the present moment, you're being aware of it, and you're not making up this kind of story about it. Okay, there's a thought arising, and this is me thinking, and this thought's really, really important, and everything in the world depends on it. As long as you're paying attention to this process that's happening, that this is arising. This is just something that's arisen, this is something that stays for a little while, and something that passes away. If you pay attention in that way, eventually you'll be moving in the right direction. But if you're paying attention to something and you're just getting lost by it, okay, I'm paying attention to my thought, and this thought goes onto that thought, and this thought goes on that thought, and you're just sort of spinning with it, then that's going in the wrong way. You're trying to find this, okay, what is the self? Is the self here? Is it there? Blah, 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 and you're just spinning, and thinking. That's going in the wrong way. You'll know that you're paying attention in the right way if the mind becomes calm and still. If you look back or you pay attention to this thing and things sort of still and become stable and solid. But if it is this kind of perpetual spinning cycle kind of thing, then that's probably attention going in the wrong way.
So do you think that something like... No, you can continue. No, I will take some time. So you can...
Excuse me for that, but I was just going to say that one of the things that we have to do when we come into the Buddhist practice, for many of us, is to recondition the right view, for example.
Yep.
And that reconditioning process is a mental process, and a very important one.
So, sorry, just in case, just so I understand the question properly.
In a sense, it isn't a question, but we do have to we have to set our minds, if you wish, into a certain pattern of thinking. And we're talking here about non-self, but I'm talking about this conditioning process that is very important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you have to. I guess in a way, you need some sort of like form work there as well to actually have some kind of practice that pushes you in the right direction, but eventually you drop the form work as well. Does that make sense? Yeah. I was just thinking this in connection. Yeah. So it's like the process of meditation and practicing the Dhamma. It is really it's about observing our own experience and seeing what the sort of the problem is there, and actually continually looking at that and continually trying to develop right view. The way we have things in the world and we sort of attach to our thoughts and all these kinds of things. But right view is, okay, I see that everything's impermanent, that everything that I attach to is suffering. This is a good framework for us to use to actually get to that point. Does that make sense? Or?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
it does. I was just...
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
I
for
have
sure.
one or two. So,
if somebody's asking a question
okay.
from the ether of the internet, it's
Yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Yep.
We have, there's one question so far online. The person's actually still just helping to explain their question.
Okay.
Originally it was, is it I do not know phenomena a way to achieve Dhamma?
Yep.
And then it's an explanation like not finding the answer.
Yeah, that's my
So
problem
it's-
as well. It's
Is it,
I don't know if I quite understand the question.
I'm struggling to understand it also.
Yeah.
But I think it's this sense of looking but not finding something or not finding an answer.
Right.
More than an answer coming, it's the fact that there is no answer. Is this the way to find a Dhamma?
I'd say if that's the formulation of the question, I would say that's correct, because as I was saying in the talk, if you're trying to look at something, if you're trying to look for this thing that's a self, start with the assumption that, okay, I've got this thing that's a self. I feel like I've got a self. This is permeated throughout my life, throughout childhood. So look to see if you've got this thing that's called a self, and the more you look for it, the more you won't find it. And that not finding is the thing that really makes you understand it a little bit better. And there doesn't necessarily need to be a one-to-one answer of like, sweet, now Ajahn Sādaro has found that there's no self, and I've got that thought doesn't have to come up in the mind. It can be it is more a sense of knowing. It is more a sense of being open and free of that concept that I am the thing that knows this. It is just more this stillness of knowing. So hopefully that answers the question.
It sounds very much like Zen approach.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know.
But it's fundamental Dhamma teaching. There's no answer to it.
Yeah. It's I guess it could be, it could be in that way. Potentially there is a bit of koanic kind of questioning methodology there. It's yeah.
Anyone else?
With the modern physics, everything in the universe is a movement of particles, movement of protons and neutrons. That's what all phenomena in the universe. That means we are also that. We are part of it, movement of particles. And, what I understand is using the sight. If I observe, say, you, for example, then moment I create you, then I create myself. It's a transiently, I create myself. Then I look at somebody else. I create him, then I create another self.
Yep.
So at that time, I find that the self is a transient creation of me all the time, and it's not a permanent thing. And we use that to live in this conventional world, conditioned world. So that's another way of saying that this I is a transient thing that we have created just to survive in this conditioned world.
Yeah, there's a subject there that's looking at objects. There's a subject there, and what those objects are, they're formulations of different elementary properties, and but I guess more what I'm pointing at as well is that there is knowing that, and there's understanding that, but then there's knowing that this thing that you take as yourself, that's also just that as well. This is also just this compounded thing that you've formed together, and it's not really actually the thing that you think it is. It is just this, this appearance in consciousness that arises because of different kind of synaptic joints in a particular functioning human brain and all these kinds of things. You can go down those rabbit holes a bit, but I've always found it better to, just to keep looking at your own experience. And the phenomena in the world is the phenomena in the world, and we do perceive it in a particular kind of way, and we take it as a particular context, and we form things as particular objects. But then also remembering that this thing that we call me is a part of that same process. So there is no, just like there is nothing, there is nothing at the base of that stool there. This thing that I think is me, there's nothing at the base of that as well.
Ajahn, regarding your basically the way you explained the whole Dhamma thing, so in a way, can we relate that Dhamma to something like awareness in a way, or the suchness of the reality, something like ultimate reality?
Yeah, for sure. It's you could say that it's one and the same thing. The awareness of reality is one and the same thing, but where it potentially gets a little bit tricky is you think, I'm aware of reality as it is, but then you also have this kind of sense of, I'm the one that's aware of reality.
Yeah.
And that you just sort of like get tricked again. You think, cool, I've got it now, but you've just sort of like tricked yourself again. So that's why it is important to always be just coming back to your experience and trying to see it. So whether it is suchness as is, or it's something beyond that, the most important thing is just to keep coming back to your own experience and looking at that.
So something like what we say in Zen, or in Zen tradition, or in basically the Chan Buddhism, which we say something like to maintain that correct thought of no thought in a way, so that in a way, because thinking can't reach it anyways, so till the time we are thinking, we are out of scope in a way. And
sorry, I don't understand the question.
So basically that thing which we say something like in order to have that particular looking back, so obviously when we are looking back, then there can't be any thoughts, right, in that situation, because if we are thinking, we are not basically looking in a way, right? So something like if we are, and more, I think the moment we try to be aware of a thought, I think the thought vanishes by itself at that moment. So logically there is a thing like we are trying to be aware, and basically there is things, basically there is thing there, but we are not thinking about it. So something like we are sitting, if the eyes are closed, then the blank thing is there, but we are looking at it, but not thinking about it. How do we look inwards in a way? So
Yeah, that's the practice. That's just what you have to just keep trying to do and keep going back in. I think.
That intervene here, I think that's the approach whereby when there's thinking, you're either taking back or taking forward. So by not thinking, you're forcing yourself to look at the present moment. So that is the approach of doing that. So when you say when you have no thoughts, meaning you're not taking back, you're not taking forward. So the only thing you can have is thinking present. That's what it means.
Great answer. Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean that you're not thinking at all. It's just that you just look at the present moment. That's it.
So for those online who couldn't hear that comment, because it wasn't near a microphone, it was about any thinking is usually looking forward or looking backwards, whereas it's not so much about not thinking at all, but just being with the present moment. Is that the summary?
Yeah.
All right. There are a couple of, there's an interesting observation / question related to this. Ajahn, I personally think that the reason our mind goes back to ignorance, even after we have a sudden realisation of no self, is that the mind is not one cohesive, all-encompassing landmass like a country, but more like an archipelago of islands of independent thoughts. One realisation does not make a realisation for all of them. The trick is to share and proliferate these realisations to each and every independent thinking little mind. In your meditations, have you ever experienced these little minds that seem to think for themselves?
Yeah, I guess so. Like just, and if we're just going to talk from a personal experience, yeah, the more you practice meditation, the more you start to realise there are these different little minds there. There's this mind that's happy in one aspect. There's mind that's sad. There's this mind that thinks I'm a particular person when I'm in a social group. There's a mind that this other kind of mind that is a self that remembers all these different kinds of things. There's a mind that when I was a kid. There was a mind when I was an adolescent. There was a mind that now I'm a monk and all these kinds of things. So yeah, there are these fragmentary factions of a mind that can potentially make up what you consider to be yourself. So, and that's, I guess, that's a part of it as well, is that as the questioner said, it's not really this one huge landmass. It is these many little things that come together and make that up. But the thing is, we take all these little tiny things to be the mind, to be our existence. And so if you actually see them as individual things, then it is much easier for you not to attach to it this one little landmass of me being anxious. This is the anxious me. You don't have to attach to that as much because you realise that there's these other ones as well, and there's potentially ones that are more wholesome. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
There's just one last online question, but it's a very broad one.
Okay.
So I'm wary of how much this opens up. But it's just, how can I practice right view in daily life? So that's a whole series of Dhamma talks in itself, perhaps. But perhaps
that could be the next talk.
Yes. I'm conscious of that. Perhaps in the perspective of what we've been talking about in terms of looking at. Looking at the Dhamma.
To give a quick, what time do we finish up? We finish up pretty soon, yeah. Oh, 10:30. Oh, so we got a bit more time. Okay, cool. I can give a bit longer answer then. So, if you look at the definition of what right view is, it's of knowing the Four Noble Truths, and so if we want to try to develop right view in our life, develop right view in our daily life, our way to do that is recollecting about the Four Noble Truths, seeing that everything that arises in your existence is dukkha, is suffering, is unsatisfactoriness in some way, and that the reason that you're having this unsatisfactoriness is because you're clinging, you're attaching to this. And knowing that there is a way out of that through the practice. You can actually be free of that, and then by actually practicing the Eightfold Path to get to that. So how do you make right view a part of your daily life? You investigate the Four Noble Truths, but most importantly, you practice the Eightfold Path as well. And obviously, right view is a part of that, but you practice these other aspects of right intention, right mindfulness, right concentration, right speech, right effort. You practice all these facets of the Eightfold Path, and the more you can actually do that, the more you will be living actually within living your daily life more within having right view. That's a quick answer. So. Any other questions? No? So who's been coming here for a very long time, and anybody here that's been coming here for a long time?
Oh, a few of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's been coming here for not many times, or maybe only the first time?
Maybe,
No?
maybe it goes to the definition of long time.
Long time. A long time. Well, when was the BSV started? In the 50s or something? 53, yeah. So that's one definition of the long time, but...
It came in 1992, is that right?
We were 1990.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Maybe I'd just like to talk about your journey in the Dhamma.
Yeah, why not? So, personally, I when I was still a layperson, I was just doing the normal things that most 20-year-olds do, and trying to build up a name for myself and build up some kind of success in the world. And I started to do that, and I started to get a few of those things that I really wanted out of life. And the more I got them, the more I realized it's like, well, is that it? Do I just keep spinning? Do I just keep spinning more and more like this? Is this going to be the rest of my life? And so I started to investigate of like, okay, what is actually going to be something then that does give me some form of contentment, that does give me some form of satisfaction with the effort that I'm putting forward in my life, and also something that will, if I can get it, it is actually going to make me happy. And that's when I started to practice some meditation. And I actually just by accident came in contact with it. I was living in Sydney at the time, and I was just looking for like a cheap place to stay in a nice suburb, and I found a place, and it was really cheap. I'm like, I'll go and check this place out. And I went there, and I opened the door, and there's all these like colourful paintings all over the wall and stuff. And it was actually a Tibetan Gompa. And I asked them, I was like, so why is it so cheap? They're like, you rent a room upstairs, and then, so are you okay with like having this Tibetan Buddhist centre down the bottom? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's awesome. It's really cheap. It's in the middle of Sydney. It's awesome. So through the process of staying there and starting to become more interested in introspective practices, I started to practice a little bit more meditation. And then there was somebody there that had ordained in the Theravada tradition. And he introduced me to different books of like Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Mahabua, and introduced me more into the ways of, practicing anapanasati and things like that. So I was practicing a lot of meditation, and I found when I started to practice meditation, it wasn't like some sort of like blinding insight, but I had some sort of aptitude with it. And as soon as I started practicing, I realized it's like, this is what I'm looking for. This contentment, this joy, this satisfaction with just being with myself. That this is what I'm after in life. This is the kind of feeling I'm after. And so I continued to practice meditation. I took some time off. I traveled throughout Southeast Asia, and I got to Thailand. And when I got to Thailand, I realized that there was many monasteries I wanted to go and see in the forest and stuff like that. And so I stayed with a lot of the good teachers and a lot of the monasteries that are off in the jungles of Thailand. And I realized when I got to Thailand that I saw people that they just ordained for a period of time. Say they might ordain for 3 months and then they disrobe and go back, and some do it for longer. So I thought, I've got a bit of time off. I'll give this a whirl, see what happens, give it a try. And yeah, I got to a place in Rayong, it's in central Thailand, and the teacher there was Ajahn Sadaro. And I got there and I had a good rapport with him, so I just thought, I'll just ordain here and I'll see actually what comes of this. And yeah, I was quite lucky that it worked out for me, and I'm still just really doing that, just seeing how this thing will work. So it's been a few years now, but I'm still just testing it out. So. But yeah, I lived for many years in Thailand. In total, not including the time that I was a monastic, but before I was a monastic as well. About 10 years in Thailand, and then I came back to Australia about 7 years ago, and was living at some of the forest monasteries in Sydney and Canberra and things like that. And so at the moment now, I'm in Adelaide. So yeah. So it's been a long ride. I've stayed at a lot of the great meditation masters. I've stayed at a lot of their monasteries and learnt from them, and practiced under them, and spent periods of time practicing with them and learning. So it's been a really rewarding experience, and it's been something that I've tried to think of the counterfactual of how my life would have turned out if I hadn't become a monk, and I can't get it. I don't know what I'd be doing. I don't know what sort of path it would have careered off to. It's probably wouldn't have been something that's so great. So actually just falling into this opportunity that I did was really auspicious, and it was something. The quality of my life, because of being a Buddhist monastic now, it's phenomenal. I get to spend my life, looking at the nature of the mind and investigating experience and asking these. My whole job is asking the big questions in life. Is who am I? Why am I here? What's the purpose? What's the meaning of this all? That's what I get to do. So I'm really grateful to have that opportunity. It's don't know what I would be doing. I don't know. Wouldn't have a clue. So. Hopefully, I'd be probably sitting in the audience somewhere, but I don't know. Don't know. You can ask normal questions. It doesn't have to be about the nature of the mind and the self. You can just you just ask normal questions as well. It's why do you wear this? Those kind of questions are fine as well. Yeah, for sure.
So just following up on your brief introduction to yourself, Ajahn, it's just saying, thank you for your talk. What is the name of the Adelaide temple where Ajahn lives, and does it have a website?
I'm at Bodhipala Forest Monastery at the moment, and it does have a website, and I have no idea what the website address is.
Could you spell the name of it?
Bodhipala.
Yeah, so you should be able to search that up and find a website.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You'll historically, you won't find many photos of me. I've all my life, whenever somebody brings out a camera or something, I usually like duck away, and so it's like, you stayed at this monastery for this long. It's like, yeah, there's no photos of you. Yeah, no, I ran away most of the times. So if you're looking for me on the internet, you probably won't find me. So.
You've been live stream all around the world.
Ah, okay. Well, that's over now then. So. Okay. So to do like a closing or something. So what we'll do is we'll just we'll pay respects to the Buddha. We'll bow 3 times. We can do the arahang if everybody knows it. Arahang samma sambuddho bhagava buddhang bhagavantang abhivademi. Just bow. Swagato bhagavata dhammo dhammang namasami. Supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka saṅkho saṅkhang namami. Very good. No problem. Do we make announcements of people to go over there or something now? Or?
Please join for lunch next door for refreshment.